Good day, all, and thank you for joining us. And welcome to the Central Palm Beach County Chamber of Commerce Candidate Forum for Florida House of Representatives, District 88. I'm Al Malafato, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors and Chair of the Economic Development and Advisory Committee. In my day job, an attorney with Lewis, Longman, and Walker in West Palm Beach. I'd also like to thank Terrence Davis, the Chair of our Government Affairs Committee, and our committee members and the Chamber staff for helping to organize today's event. And finally, I'd like to thank our moderator for today, Michael Williams from WPTV Channel 5 and host of the Sunday news program, To the Point. We have so far 5 candidates joining us today. Hopefully we'll get a 6th one in a moment or two. But at this point, without further ado, I'd like to turn the program over to Mr. Williams. Michael?
Thank you very much for having me. Again, if everybody would make sure to unmute their mics, I see at least 3 of them or 4. Go ahead and unmute them, and that way as we move along, it'll be smoothly. Mr. Thomas unmuted. Mr. Anderson, lost your picture. If you can go ahead and put your video back up and unmute your mic. Mr. Hardy, we have you loud and clear. Ms. Asta, Ms. Matson. Thank you for having me. This, I can say, is a first for me. I normally would be sitting with all of you, but now in the new world of Zoom, this is new for me as well. And Mr. Anderson, we have you back. If you can just unmute your audio, please. We'll go over format in a moment. I'll very briefly introduce each of you to our participants joining us, as this is very much a grassroots effort to introduce the audience or reintroduce the audience to all of you. We will be doing it in alphabetical order. Reuben Anderson, servant leader, as he describes himself, and a humanitarian who works hard, he says, to earn respect of others and to lead with transparency. Been involved with a number of charitable organizations such as Pediatric Oncology Support Team, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and the Purple Chicks annual Father's Day 5K and Family Run. He'll talk more about himself, but that's a brief introduction to somebody who has thrown his hat into this ring. Omari Hari, Lake Worth Beach Commissioner, thank you very much as we all join you to our meeting this day. Describes himself South Florida native and 4th generation educator. Has made a career, you say, of fighting for Floridians. You're a civics teacher, proud union member, city commissioner, as I said, in Lake Worth Beach. And you have argued that you're a leading voice for citizens you feel are too often ignored by government. Now you want to take your voice to Tallahassee. Al Jaquette, I'll go ahead and do a brief bio, assuming he joins us in a few minutes. The incumbent right now. Education, a background in economics as well as law, current state representative, represents clients in both criminal and civil cases. Danielle Matson is a teacher who describes herself as someone who loves to serve the community, whether she says it's working with disadvantaged youth, volunteering at her church, or being an advocate for human trafficking survivors.
I have a name from Candace Franklin from last time, from March.
Whoops, we've got some nice mic up there. At any rate, we'll have a little bit of this. We'll bear with each other through our Zoom protocol, but Danielle Matson will have a chance to introduce herself to you more in a moment. Sienna Asta, a lawyer. She'll go into, we don't have an official bio, but somebody who also, first timer, throwing her hat in the ring here as a lawyer who sees a need for the kind of leadership she feels she can provide in this district. And finally, we have Cedric Thomas, who's not really in San Francisco, but it's his very good Zoom backdrop, as he reminded me. A Riviera Beach resident who argues that he brings years of experience to the table, 19 years as a certified law enforcement officer, 9 years of experience as a city councilman, 9 years of experience as a community redevelopment agency member. All of you will, of course, intertwine in your comments over the next 90 minutes a bit of your personal and professional story and why you think it uniquely qualifies you to be the next person who goes to Tallahassee as a representative. Just a bit about the rules, if I may. You will all have a chance to introduce yourself according to the rules of the debate. You will each have that chance starting out right away, and you'll each have up to 2 minutes, We also have somebody who will be giving you time cues. At the end of your 2 minutes, if you go 2:05, we're not going to cut the mic off, but we do have somebody who has the mute button in hand. And if you go much over 5 to no more than 10 seconds over, you are going to be muted. So you're going to each have 2 minutes for opening statements. At the end, you're going to have up to 2 minutes for closing comments as well. For the Q&A, you're going to have up to 90 seconds. I'm going to go up and down the list in alphabetical order. So if I start with one question at the beginning, at the next question will flip around. We'll start with the last person who answered, giving them chance to be the first one who answered. We have a lot to cover. I hope all of you, if each of you can check in one more time and acknowledge, Danielle, you need to take your mic. Everybody needs to leave their microphones to the non-mute position so that we can hear you. I would ask you, though, you will each have a chance to respond, but we will be firm on the time on behalf of our participants. At the beginning, now that we've laid out the ground rules, the Chamber took great care to make a grassroots effort to see what the community is concerned about right now. What are the kinds of questions people are asking that are very much on their minds? It will not surprise you, of course, that coronavirus in many, many ways occupies the minds, hearts, and worries of people, financially, physically, from an emotional standpoint. So we will begin in that spirit with the questions that you participants as members of the Chamber, as members of the community are posing. Your number one question that you pose: what is your position on the Florida Department of Education's mandate to physically open all public and charter schools next month? And we will begin in alphabetical order after, so I've teed up that question. So that's the one I want you to be thinking about. But first, we're going to allow you to introduce yourself. Then we're going to come back to what you at home are asking. But we will begin with our opening statement from Reuben Anderson. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, Reuben Anderson. I'm also a substitute teacher and a academic tutor and with the school system. Been doing that for about 7 or 8 years. The mandate to open the schools, I think, is a big mistake. I'm there in the schools every day, and I just don't think that we'll be able to practice social distancing. I think we need to go to a virtual school. The school board and the members of the school board and all of those who are involved have had enough time to figure out what we need to do. I mean, we've been out of school for 4 months, I believe, or maybe more or less. But I just think it's a big mistake to open the schools. Children, especially the grades that I teach, which is kindergarten through 4th grade, they're not going to practice social distancing, and the teachers are going to be at risk. And the last thing we need is for our children to get sick.
Mr. Anderson, take the remaining part of your time here to introduce yourself as well, because we'll jump into schools more. But you have a minute left. Introduce yourself a little more.
Oh, okay. And I've been around this county for 40 years or more. I've owned a business. I worked as a certified golf course superintendent. Matter of fact, I was the only one at the time. I had an opportunity to practice my business skills. I worked for a company that was hired by the United States government. We put the missiles up in the air. I was very familiar when we shot the missiles down during the war that we had these past 3 years. So with my business experience and my experience being in the neighborhood, being a pastor in the neighborhood, I'm well known throughout Palm Beach County, as a matter of fact, throughout the entire state of Florida. And so I want to bring those tools with me to help govern and manage the state of Florida, especially here in District 88.
Mr. Anderson, your opening statement time is up. Again, I wanted to emphasize the grassroots nature of this meeting with all of you who are participating and listening to the candidates. So I wanted to tee up what's on your mind about schools, and we're going to get to that. It's a super hot topic, as all of you at home know. But right now, Omari Hardy, Commissioner, your opening comments, your opening 2-minute statement. Introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, sir. And thank you again, not only to you, but to all those who participated in this grassroots effort to make this forum possible. It's been very difficult to campaign as usual with coronavirus, and I appreciate the effort that was put into this. My name is Omari Hardy, and to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm first of all a 4th-generation educator. My parents are educators. My grandmother was an educator. My great-grandmother founded the first kindergarten school for African-American folks on that side of the tracks in Fort Lauderdale. And so education is in my blood, and that's what I do professionally, managing a partnership between the school district of Palm Beach County and the West Palm Beach Housing Authority, where we're focusing on kids who live in public housing to ensure that they don't fall through the cracks. And in addition to that, I'm an affordable housing advocate, and I imagine that topic may come up later. But of course, I'm a city commissioner in Lake Worth, where I've served since 2017. And, I'm in this race because really for two reasons. The first has to do with some disappointment in the incumbent, but it also has to do with the fact that I think our district can stand to have a leader with a clearer vision for the district and also for the state of Florida. And, I was someone who supported Representative Jaquette on his way into office. And since then, he has personally let our city down. I was up in Tallahassee when we were waiting on him to present a water project. I'm sorry, I'm getting a message that says there's an issue with my sound.
Yeah, it's kind of going in and out.
We can hear you. It's a little in and out, but we can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, is this a little better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was up in Tallahassee when Representative Jaquette was supposed to make a presentation to the appropriate committee for water appropriation, and the gentleman never showed. And in addition to his just not being present in the district or in Tallahassee for crucial votes, when he shows up, the votes that he takes are not in line, I believe, and I'm getting that my time is over. Well,
we'll have plenty of time to expound
Sure.
on your thoughts. So we've got
Sure.
90 minutes here, and so we'll have plenty of time. We're waiting. Next in order would be Representative Jaquette. We're waiting to see. There could be some technical issues signing in. We all can appreciate that. We'll try and find out if he's going to be able to join the scheduled 11:30 call as we're now into it. For now, though, we will move on to Danielle Madsen, your opening 2-minute comments.
Hi, I'm Danielle Madsen, Republican candidate for Florida House, District 88. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank the Central Palm Beach County Chamber of Commerce, all the board of directors, including Mr. Carner, Mr. McGinnis, Ms. Trosclair, also all the management team that made this possible. CEO Bedford, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Brief, and all the management team. Thank you so much for having me. I am a teacher. I'm a person of faith. I've served the community for years. I'm very practical. I want to work with Republicans, work with Democrats, work with independents, work with those in my community to get things done, practical solutions that will serve the people. If elected, my goal is to not only have an office that is easy to get to and that is accessible, but I want it to be school central and job central. What I want to do is be a shining beacon of hope and light and resources. I'm very big on school choice, and I support every child having an opportunity to receive the best education, a top-notch education. So if elected again, I want to be accessible to all those I serve in the community, and I want my office to be Job Central and School Central. And again, Danielle Madsen for Florida House, District 88. Thank you so much for having me.
Lawyer, Sienna Asta, 2-minute opening statement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. And the main reason I'm running is because our state and our country are in crisis. I know that if you want to change the world, you need to be the change. As a local attorney, I've been touched by the stories of so many of our neighbors who find themselves in despair and mistreated by a system and a society that discards far too many people. These neighbors, they have stories that need to be told, and they need to be represented in our halls of government. That is why I'm stepping up to run for State House. We cannot wait around for other people to fix the problems that we ourselves are disgusted by. In fact, my opponent, he isn't doing anything to fix these problems. In many ways, I think he's contributing to the problems. He voted against his fellow Democrats and joined Republicans in approving a bill limiting abortion rights. He has not maintained a constituent office in our district while he's been serving as our state representative, and he missed 3 votes in our legislature. And on top of all of this, he's impossible to reach when it comes to helping our neighbors who are looking for a helping hand. And this is unacceptable. So that is why I'm running, and I'm Sienna Asta for District 88. And when you need to reach me, I'll be there.
And finally, Cedric Thomas, only by virtue of alphabet. And then after Mr. Thomas's opening statement, we'll move back up the list and you'll have the chance to answer the question I teed up earlier to get you all thinking. Mr. Thomas, your opening statement, 2 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And thank you to the chamber and all of the management that took their time to put this together. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be with you on this morning to share my thoughts and my vision for District 88. My name is Cedric Thomas. I have been a lifetime Floridian Born in Miami, raised here in Riviera in West Palm Beach. I spent the most of my time in Riviera Beach, where I've been a police officer in Riviera Beach, where I've been a city commissioner and council person in Riviera Beach, and a CRA commissioner in Riviera Beach. I'm also a business owner, entrepreneur in transportation and security. I do those things in addition to the community advocacy that I participate in. I'm here and I'm running for this office. It's not the first time that I ran. I ran for this office when there was a shakeup back in 2009 when a few of the commissioners went around and the governor made an appointment, and I ran for the district then, which was District 84. It originally went out to the Glades area. Once they did the census and redistricting was done, now it goes down into the Delray Beach area. So this is not my first time attempting, at this particular seat. It's been one of the things that I wanted to do, to be able to advocate on the state level, to make sure that, we're sitting at the table, to make sure that we get an opportunity when things are fresh, when things are discussed, that Riviera Beach, West Palm Beach, and the entire District of 88, can be at the table. So I know we got a lot of time to go, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
With that in mind, I teed up a question that you, our participants, have uppermost on your minds. And the chamber made it crystal clear to me as we discussed this last week that they wanted to make sure that as a community is built from the grassroots up, from the ground up, that they wanted to hear from you, our participants. Obviously this year, COVID-19, and in the last several months as well, issues about racial equality have dominated the national conversation, dominated Floridians' concerns. So I gave you a chance to think about it, even in your opening statements. Mr. Thomas, I want to begin with you, with what you, the participants, asked the chamber to make sure these candidates addressed. And there were a number of questions, and we're going to try and make sure we get to all of them. But two of them really dovetail. And we'll begin with you, Mr. Thomas. And again, 90 seconds, up to 90 seconds. After that, you will be muted. So try and be concise as you can be. What is your position, Mr. Thomas, on how the state should address the opening of schools during the COVID-19 process? And that really dovetails with the top question. What is your position when the Florida Department of Education made a mandate by order of Governor DeSantis to physically open all public and charter schools next month? Now, ultimately, districts have the final latitude. But to those two central questions, for so many parents, for so many people, what is your response? What is your position? Mr. Thomas, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. My response is simply this. I think the governor made that decision based on an economic point of view. That's my belief. He didn't say that, but that's my belief. However, I don't believe that it is a good decision at this time. I do understand that students learn better interacting, but because we have this epidemic or this pandemic, everybody has to be a little bit more creative in how we're going to do this. I believe that they're going to have to start virtually, or they're going to need to be able to put in a system where they're going to have to socially distance. I believe it's going to be harder because youth are just not accustomed to what's going on, like none of us are. All in all, I don't think it's a great decision to open up, and I ultimately support the school district saying, Palm Beach County School District saying that they weren't going to do it. I think that's the smart thing. Our cases are on the rise. Florida is breaking records with our cases daily, and I just think it's a bad time to do that. You can't say you want to open up schools and close parks and close beaches and do all those things. To me, it just doesn't make sense. So the governor did what he did, but I'm glad our district utilized their authority and said, hey, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put our students at risk, and I support that decision.
And in fact, 15,300 cases reported over the weekend, a record for one day anywhere in the country since the pandemic began throughout Florida. And Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade continue in many ways to lead the list on cases, although the caseload has begun to spread to other parts of the state. The death toll was reduced over recent days, but still grave concern about where we are. Against that backdrop, against that context, and most importantly to the question that was asked about your position on the mandate to reopen schools and how it should be handled. Ms. Asta, your response.
Yes, so I am completely against this mandate to open schools in the next month or so. It's definitely way too soon. I understand a lot of parents are probably anxious to get their children out of the house back in school, but the coronavirus is not, we haven't reached a plateau. I have got the chart right here in front of me. You can Google COVID tracker in Florida, and like you said, 15,300 cases this past weekend, and the numbers are just going up and up and up. I don't think it's safe to be sending our children out to the schools where they'd be mixing and mingling with other children, who knows what's in their homes, then bringing it back to our homes. So I think people need to be patient. Patience is a virtue. And I think that it needs more time for the virus to either have a mass vaccine that can come out, or just wait for those numbers to plateau. The other thing is that I think this is a good time for parents to almost go back to square one with their children. I think a lot of the public schools have kids teaching kids, and bad habits and things like that, or things that children shouldn't know at the age that they learn these things, for example. And without going into too much detail about that, I think by having the children at home, by having the parents have a heavier hand with them, it's going to bring the focus back to the family.
Implicit in the comments is that, at least for you two, Mr. Thomas and Ms. Asta, you believe that distance learning can still work. A lot of parents are arguing, we planned on this for a few months. How do we do our jobs? How do we teach our children? How do we handle all that? But you have the backdrop of this caseload. Many teachers are worried. It's all part of this very involved conversation. Ms. Madsen, against that backdrop, and particularly to the questions participants in this conference and others have asked, what is your position?
I want to be very clear. I am 100% for kids going back to school in person as soon as it is safely possible.
But that's the key. Is it safely possible right now or in the next month?
Here's what I think. When you look at 100% online school, no in person at all, there is a digital divide. There are those in our community that are dealing with poverty, that there's a digital divide. There may be one computer per household and there's multiple children. So I feel like those students that are missing out on the in-person interaction are missing the benefits of the one-on-one teaching. They're also missing out on the benefits of being with the other students. I have a counseling degree, so I'm very big on mental health. I support the mental health of the students as well. They're missing the encouragement of the teachers, the one-on-one interaction, seeing their classmates. And so again, because of the disparity of income and other things in our community, I want to make sure that every child is able to have a top-notch education. So as soon as we can safely do it, I do support the kids going back to school in person. And let's be creative and use entrepreneurial spirit when we do it. And let's be smart about it and allow those that need to opt out, whether that be teacher or child, to do so. But as soon as we are safely able, let's get these kids back in school in person so the kids can have the benefits and the parents can go back to work.
If you were sitting in the House right now, just yes or no, do you think, when we're less than a month away from the scheduled openings, do you think we're safely able right now?
I would
if you
like
had to
to
vote, if you had to vote right now, and ultimately local districts make the decision, I understand that.
Right.
But if you had to vote right now, safely able to go back, would you vote yay, go back, or nay, let's hold off longer?
Well, first I would have to see
very
all
briefly, because I need to move on.
Yes,
Yay or
first
nay?
I would have to see all the responsible data, because what I see is obviously as more people are tested, there's more cases. However, we have to look at ratios. So I would need all the, all the data in front of me, but I do encourage as soon, and I'm not the one that ultimately make the decision, but as soon as we can get the kids back in school, I do support that in person, and whether that has to be in shifts or however that is done.
In fairness, need to move on, but wanted to clarify your position, as at least so far it's an outlier as we speak to candidates here, but it's a position that many parents are discussing, exactly what you're saying, and many others side with Ms. Asta, Mr. Thomas. And now we have a chance to hear what Commissioner Hardy thinks about the questions that were put to it. The Florida Department of Education and the governor. Our participants asked, what about the mandate to physically open all public schools next month? And what is your position on how the state should address the opening of schools. Commissioner Hardy, your take.
Right. So I'm the only person in the Democratic primary who is an educator, and having taught in a classroom and having personally gotten sick from students who have been in my classroom, I can tell you that I would be concerned if I had to enter the classroom right now. And I want to share with you a story that was conveyed to me. I was speaking with the principal of Palm Beach Lakes High School, who told me a story about a grandmother. And the grandmother basically told him that she was afraid of sending her child back to school because she's the only family that this child has. And so if something happens to this grandmother, if this child goes to school and tracks COVID-19 back into the house, being that she's the only family that he has, if something happens to her, then he becomes a foster child, right? And there are lots of families who have very, very unique issues, and I don't feel that they have been considered adequately, right? And so, we shut down school when the situation with respect to coronavirus is not nearly as bad as it is right now. Cases are up, the test positivity rate is up, ICU bed utilization is up. And, I don't see a reason for us to have 100% in school learning right now. And what I'll say though is that the executive order, if I read it correctly, has an out for local school districts. They still have the ability to decide for themselves with consultation with local or state health departments. And in view of the data that we're getting, I don't see that it's safe for us to send kids and teachers into schools at this time. And I applaud the school district of Palm Beach County for the decision that they made to start with online learning.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir. I disagree, as I said before, with sending the kids back to school at this time. I just don't think it's safe. I also applaud the Palm Beach County schools for making their decisions. And I think right about now, we need to ensure the parents that their voices are heard and their voices are met also. So if we're going to put our kids back in school, as I said before, there's virtual learning, and we need to, right about now, not worry about the technologies in school. We need to worry about their learning needs and focusing on their learning and target needs that the kids have. And so my answer is no. I don't think we should allow our kids to go back to school. I'm 64. I deal with my babies all the time, and sometimes, I have to hug my babies and I have to reassure them, and they have snotty noses and everything, and I just don't think it's safe for teachers. I don't think it's safe for the children. I don't think it's safe to bring them back to school at this time.
We know that this, for those of you participating, is such a nuanced issue. Worries about teacher health, certainly first and foremost, of course, worry about student health, the risk of going to school and becoming sick versus the detriment to the educational opportunities when one is at home for distance learning, which most parents, I've raised 3 daughters, distance learning, every parent's told me it's been enormously difficult. We'll talk about that more, but in the interest of talking about a wide variety of topics here, I do want to bring up that at the end of the day, this debate is about leadership in the toughest of times right now. Coronavirus is presenting that kind of leadership challenge. Congresswoman Donna Shalala, Democrat, told the Miami Herald that she appears to be the first lawmaker to call on the governor to issue a new 14-day statewide stay-at-home order, as well as mandatory orders to wear masks in public, a statewide order. Do you support those twin calls, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I do. If we're going, I travel a lot. I'm in West Palm Beach today. I'm in Kissimmee, Florida tomorrow. I'm in Orlando the next day, or Miami. And I went to one town, and they are not wearing masks. They said that they don't believe in wearing masks. They think that this coronavirus is a hoax. And of course, we did not try to convince them, but if we're going to wear masks in one county, I think we should wear it in another county. So that mandate, I do agree with. We should wear masks, not for the sake of other people, but for our sakes, to keep us safe.
And to be clear, you also would support, as Congresswoman Shalala stepping out on this. If you had to make a vote on it right now, at the end of the day, not that it works that way, but people want to know, this is a test of leadership for all of you about the way you feel. You would support a new 14-day stay-at-home order statewide?
Yes, I would.
All right. Mr. Anderson, Commissioner Hardy, same questions. It's kind of tough leadership decisions. Some say leadership has been on spot. Others say it's been sorely lacking in many respects. Where do you stand on those twin questions, Commissioner Hardy?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm a little partial to Representative Shalala. Myself being a University of Miami Hurricane, she'll always be President Shalala to me.
Well, this Gator won't hold that against you. But
well,
go on, sir, in all seriousness.
She has a wealth of knowledge. She was the former Secretary of Health and Human Services during the Clinton administration. And I believe that she has a data-driven, a data-based approach. And I believe that she's right when she says that we need a statewide order on masks, and also that we should, kind of revert to where we were before we started reopening. And, I want to be clear about something. We reopened too quickly. That's not my opinion. That's just comparing our actions to the guidelines that were set forth by the White House's own task force. We needed a 14-day downward trajectory in cases. We did not have that, at least in Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Miami-Dade County when we reopened.
Let me interject for the rest of your answer, though. What about participants watching say, I've lost my job, I've had friends who've lost their job. The economic pain is such that we can't go back and do another statewide close.
Right, and that is a public policy problem for folks like us who are vying for office. I think one of the reasons why folks are clamoring for us to reopen is because, frankly, the federal government and state and local governments have been too stingy with the aid that needs to be provided to small business owners and to workers. If we had a stimulus that was in line with the need for what appears to be an economic depression, not just a simple recession, if we had a stimulus that was lined up with that, folks would not be so quick to clamor to that. So we've spent well over $2 trillion, at this point, but a lot of the money has not gone to the people who need it most. And that's why I think folks are clamoring for reopen prematurely, in my opinion.
But even given the economic pain, and we've all seen what's happened, you would still at this point support a call for closing down for 14 days to try and get a better handle. Yes, I want to be very clear.
Yes, look, I can think of nothing more important than staying alive and then protecting vulnerable people.
We, of course, will have time to talk about this more in different parts and questions and venues, but we will move on right now. For those of you just joining us as participants, we had hoped to have incumbent Al Jaquette here. We don't know if there are technical issues or others. We're still waiting to see if he comes online. But for those of you just joining us, we'd invited and Six had accepted. We're waiting to see if we can get him online or to see what's going on there. But nonetheless, Danielle Mattson, same question. Do you support a statewide mandate from the governor to require people to wear masks? And would you support, as Democrat Donna Shalala is starting to say, and other Democrats have hinted at it, but she's been more forceful in her comments, that we need a new 14-day stay-at-home order statewide. Do you support both of those items? If so, why? If not, why not? You're muted, Ms. Mattson. Your microphone's muted.
Thank you. Thank you
Go
so
ahead.
much. Of course, I do support us being respectful of one another. If we're in a crowded place, we need to be wearing masks. Would I support a stay-at-home order for 2 weeks? I want to be very clear. I want to see churches open. I want to see businesses open. Businesses should have the right to do what Walmart has done with the placing of different things to make it to where you can social distance. But I'm for businesses being allowed to open and churches to stay open. I would not like to see a stay-at-home for 2 weeks. I would like also, though, those that are vulnerable, that would be vulnerable, to stay at home and be protected. But for those that are healthy, to have the freedom to choose to go where they need to go and to conduct their business.
Sienna Asta, again, your microphone is muted. If you'd unmute your mic, Ms. Asta, but the same question to you. You're unmuted now about the question that you've heard. Your response, whether you would support or not support what Congresswoman Shalala talked about to the Miami Herald yesterday, she thinks is necessary.
I agree. I would support it. I think it is necessary. This may not be what we want, but this is what we need. We need to be patient and we need to have these numbers go down. Sure, we want to go places in person. We want our children to go back to schools. We want to go to church in person. I agree with Ms. Mattson there, but that's not what we need. And the state of Florida needs to be patient and we need to get these numbers down. I think a 2-week or 14-day stay-at-home order would have a dramatic impact on lowering those numbers. Same thing with the wearing of the facial mask coverings. You travel through different cities throughout Florida, and many cities are not enforcing it. A lot of people are not wearing these masks, and that's a problem. It's not about protecting me. It's about protecting the people in my family. It's not about protecting you. It's the people in your family, things like that. So people need to be a little bit less selfish and a little bit more patient for the greater good.
So, Mr. Thomas, unmute your mic, please, and your response.
Well, first, as it relates to the mask, yes, absolutely. Everyone I feel needs to be wearing a mask. I feel that should be mandated, and it is mandated in this county already. So the majority of us in this county, I believe, are just following that. However, when it comes to the mandatory shutdown, some of my opponents, may be government funded, where they are getting a check, while they're sitting home. A lot of individuals like myself who are entrepreneurs, it's affecting our business greatly. However, I'm in the transportation industry. People are not going anywhere. Disney World is closed or whatever, so they're not really going anywhere. But there's other businesses that can work within the guidelines. I think that they should be able to operate. It's an economic issue, right? And nobody wants to be unsafe, but people want to live. The people who work for the school district or work for housing authority or wherever they work, they're going to get a check whether they come in to work or not. It's the other individuals that are having the problem, that are feeling the real pinch. Now, if our state is willing to go ahead and do a stimulus package that will help us, maybe like Canada is doing, fine. But even with the $1,200 that you get, or whatever the monies that you get for the government for the PPP program, it's still not enough. If you can't freeze mortgages, you can't freeze your utilities. You can't do that.
Mr. Thomas, your time is up, but since you answer the question as we move back up the list, let us segue into specifically. The Chamber, of course, exists because it is the place for vitality and thought and concepts about how to support businesses, especially small businesses that make up the lifeblood of any chamber of commerce, any community. Given that, what specifically, if elected, would you do? What do we need to do in terms of supplying, if you believe that's the case, more financial assistance, more ability for small businesses to have latitude to bring back workers, but perhaps, as Mr. Hardy said earlier, Commissioner Hardy said earlier, not be worried that if they have to be closed a little bit longer because of coronavirus, that it's going to put them out of business? What are the specific steps as a state legislator you would take? And I would ask you to begin with unemployment benefits in Florida that are about to run out, that are among the lowest in the nation at $200, I believe, $75 a week for 12 weeks. What are the specific financial steps you would take? Speak to our participants directly that would help their small businesses bridge this gap, that would help individuals bridge this gap. What would you do differently, and be as specific as you can be, Mr. Thomas?
Well, first of all, the unemployment benefit needs to be raised dramatically.
What is dramatic, and how do you pay for it?
Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out the additional funds. I saw that the governor vetoed quite a bit of projects to try to pay for some of the things that is going to have to go into the COVID response that the state is going to roll out. However, there are still areas where you can be a little bit more resourceful. We can still fund unemployment a little bit better than what we're doing. The first thing you need to do is be able to have easier access to it. But even when you get the access to it, it needs to be higher than $275 a week. The average light bill is more than $275, a month. So that is not nearly enough. All right. So if that means that you need corporations to be able to kick in a little bit more to do that, or make sure that people are not fraudulent, with these benefits to do that. But that is the first thing. The other thing that we need to do, and that we need to make sure that we're looking at this, is that it's not about you just giving somebody a check, right? Most of the individuals are below the median line of income anyway. If you have a mortgage, the government or the state can't make your private mortgage company not make you pay, right? They can't give you a reprieve.
Mr. Thomas,
that's the biggest issue.
we'll have to move on to our next candidate. Ms. Asta, what does your coronavirus financial ongoing relief package look like for individuals and small businesses in the district you would like to serve? Be as specific as you can. You have 90 seconds.
I think the biggest problem that we've got here is this is uncharted territory. It's hard to budget for something that has never been encountered before. So another problem is that Florida needs more money. And where it's going to come from is, it's going to be another issue we're going to have to tackle in Tallahassee. But for the most part, we've got budget issues, we've got problems with the unemployment system, and we need to generate more money for the state. And keeping the state of Florida solvent is going to be a big concern. We could expand Medicaid, and I think that alone would pump some additional federal dollars into our healthcare systems. But as far as managing this crisis financially in light of COVID-19, I think it's going to take a little bit more sitting down and strategizing to get the numbers to line up.
Danielle Matson, candidate Matson, your response. What would your coronavirus relief package, ongoing package look like for constituents, many of whom may be watching right now, say, I need more help both individually for my small business to bridge a gap that right now seems to be getting wider instead of smaller given the sudden huge increase in cases. What does it look like specifically?
Absolutely. And I 100% support pro-business and support small businesses, mom and pop businesses. One thing that I do like, Palm Beach Gardens, they're doing a small business relief fund. I want to see more of that. And in response to COVID, number one, we need responsible data. Let's talk ratios. We need numbers so that we know, okay, more people are tested. What is the percentage of people that were positive out of the people tested? So I want to make sure there's responsible data. Second of all, opt out. If you're a business, and you have an employee member that is vulnerable, they can opt out. I go to a business frequently for massage therapy. One of their people is a virtual receptionist. So if teachers need to opt out or students need to opt out, or if an employee needs to opt out, allow them the opportunity to do so. So businesses can still open, but you're allowing people to opt out that need to. So
what about direct financial relief that the state could provide or press Washington to provide?
Yes, I'm 100% for looking into all the options to provide more relief. Another thing that we need to do is the unemployment site is a joke. We need to improve that greatly. It's causing a lot of people problems. I hear from so many people in the community that I'm praying for, that I'm trying to assist, that need jobs, they want jobs, they've lost jobs. So our unemployment site needs to be reworked. We need to put work in that because people are suffering and they need our help. And our unemployment site needs to be working efficiently. And we have the capability to do that here in Florida, to have a great unemployment site.
To all of you, I realize any one of these questions could take a 2-hour discussion about the economics. We need to move on to Commissioner Hardy, but we're fully respectful that any one of these questions is worthy of a 2, 3, 4-hour discussion. Having said that, it is your chance for your constituents or would-be constituents in this district, if you should be elected, sir, to say, what does your coronavirus relief package look like economically? What are we doing or not doing that you would, in your time in the legislature, immediately tackle to give that economic relief that you talked about earlier? What does it look like for the constituents listening and watching you right now?
First of all, and I appreciate the question, the most important thing for all of us to remember is that the government with the most resources to address this problem is the federal government, and they have failed, in my opinion, not only to mount a coordinated response to this coronavirus pandemic, but also, again, to put money in the pockets of the people who need it. That's number one. And so my first priority would be pressuring federal legislators to come up with a more robust stimulus package for working class Americans. That's number one. But from a state perspective, there are a few things we could do. The first thing we could do is to have a more robust small business loan program. And that's very important. Florida needs its own version of PPP, but it needs to be tailored to the businesses that really need it so that large corporations I understand that access to capital is a difficult thing, but we don't need large corporations soaking up these funds when small businesses need it most. That's number one. Number two is I believe that we need not only Medicaid expansion, which we've sorely needed for a long time, but we also need to restore the 90-day Medicaid retroactivity, whereby if you get Medicaid, it's retroactive to the previous 90 days. That's extremely important. That would cover about 900,000 Floridians today. And then the last piece is the unemployment piece. And as Mr. Thomas alluded, the unemployment piece is complicated. It's not just about the amount of the benefit, but it's also about access to the benefit. And we have an unemployment system that was purposely sabotaged by a previous governor who did not believe philosophically in this type of assistance. And unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. $275 is not enough, and we need people to have greater access to these benefits.
Mr. Anderson, the same question I would pose to you. Your time, sir. Mr. Anderson. Unmute your mic, please, sir. Your mic is muted, sir. There you go.
Okay. Yes, I believe that the federal government, as one has said, they're the ones with all of the money, so to speak. And
but
I
state
think,
lawmakers are the ones who can make sure that money's channeled where they want. So how do you
yes,
tackle
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
The state lawmakers have to make sure that when that money is there, that it is given right away to the people who are requesting the money, instead of holding it, instead of holding the money. You know, I also believe that larger businesses that are making money should hire smaller businesses that are losing money. If they take the time to hire them, then that will give them some relief. Back in the days when Ronald Reagan was president, I'm a Democrat, but I'm running NP. Ronald Reagan was running for president. He had a program going on, and we would hire people. And when we hired them, the federal government would pay us a 6% on to what we have given our employees to make sure that they stayed employed, make sure that they were educated in the field, any field that they were trying to work in. And so I just think that larger businesses, as we did before, should hire smaller businesses that are going out of business. And the education, the unemployment, it is a joke. It's hard to get into, especially those who are very challenged when it comes to technologies. It's very, very challenged. They need to redo that and make it easier for people to get in. Some people, they said $274. Some people are only getting $58 a week.
Mr.
Yes.
No, I think we're gonna let you continue because we're gonna turn the questions, go back down the list. Your time was coming up, but we'll pose this question. Many of you have touched on it, and obviously coronavirus, and we're also going to talk about issues about housing affordability, the renewed focus that so many say is necessary for racial equality in our communities and in our country. But want to begin, though many of you have touched on it, you know the audience here today. The Chamber's put people together. Many, I presume, of you watching are in the business community. Perhaps many of you are not. If you had to pick, as the old saying goes, if you have 20 priorities, you have none. So if you had to pick the one priority that would energize and be your laser focus in the legislature, the one priority, remembering the audience that has joined us here today, what would that priority be, even if you've already touched on it a bit, and how specifically would you tackle it for your constituents to be? Mr. Anderson?
Wow, the one priority, Michael, that's a hard
That's your
one.
laser focus. You can only spend the
focus.
next few years working on that for the betterment of the community, whether it's the small business community, people in need in your community. What would it be?
Well, I would focus on inclusion and not exclusion of people in businesses, to make sure that everybody have the equal opportunity to earn a decent living in this country. Housing is so unaffordable here in Palm Beach County. The minimum wage is a joke. People trying to make ends meet, and it's very hard. So I would focus on equal opportunity for everybody in this county to make sure that they make enough money to pay their bills and to have a little extra to enjoy themselves, So I would focus on that. And I can say more, but I would just focus on equal opportunity inclusion for everybody in this county.
How would you get the Republican legislature to go along? Many argue that a higher minimum wage, for instance, means employers will have fewer people working because they can't afford it. So how would you convince the people who don't agree with you in Tallahassee? Very briefly, sir.
Well, how would I convince them? I don't think I ever will. I think I never will. I think just to be a model, to be a role model, to be a model, to target one business that's going to work with you and let them see that model and
Right.
just work off of that model. I mean,
Mr. Anderson, we'll have
yes.
to move on. You'll have time to clarify your thoughts. Remember, you all will have closing comments. Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
if you can unmute your microphone. Same question. And again, I know you said, wait a minute, nobody just has one priority. But if you had a laser focus on one thing, the one thing that you'd like to say to constituents after a presumed, let's say, first term of service, that you got one big thing accomplished for this community, your community, what would it be?
Thank you for the question. If it was one thing that I was limited to being able to do, I would improve our public schools here within District 88, but also obviously throughout the state of Florida. Florida is the third largest state in America, but we don't rank anywhere near that when it comes to our educational outcomes. And, for me, it really starts with early childhood education. We live in a state where VPK doesn't work for most families. Most families have a choice of getting free VPK for the entire school day for half a school year, or for the entire school year for half the day. That doesn't work for most working class families, and that's something that absolutely must be addressed. In addition to that, with regard to VPK, there's a work requirement. So if your parent is, for example, down on their luck, then they can't get VPK. In addition to that, there's also a requirement that the parent be a documented resident of the United States. And, I represent Lake Worth, and there are lots of undocumented folks, and their kids are unable to access VPK because of the immigration status of their parents. Not only is that morally wrong, but it's a strategic misstep, because those kids, many of them are citizens, and they are the future of this state, of its workforce, and they're going to be sitting in candidates forums like this 20 years from now. And so I think it's important to start early with them. I would also say we have to bring back the vocations and the trades in our schools. There are kids who they're being tested to death, right? But because they don't do well on these standardized tests, they don't think they have any talents. But if you're from a different generation, an older generation, you couldn't graduate high school without trying your hand at something that wasn't necessarily academic or book learning in nature, but that could improve you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. We need to move along. Ms. Mattson.
Yes, one word, education. And that's education for children and education for adults as well. With COVID, a lot of jobs may be obsolete, and there's going to be brand new jobs to be trained for. So
Put specifics to that. We're all for education. Specifically, what would you improve and how would you pay for it?
First of all, I want more money for school choice. And as the Republican candidate, just the way that politics works, the Republicans are the majority party. I am the most able to bring home dollars to my community. Also, I want to be very clear. I'm against any new taxes on small businesses. The business owners that have talked to me said whenever there's a windfall, like after 9/11, we get all these new taxes on small businesses. The small businesses, their bills haven't changed. They're still having to pay rent. They're still having to pay for things. So the business owners have urged to me, protect us, leave us alone, and protect us. And that's what I want to do. So again, I am the most able to go to Tallahassee, bring home dollars to my district, and also I'm against any new taxes on small businesses to make up any kind of shortfall that we may experience. I believe that we need to support our small businesses and business in general and let them thrive.
Ms. Asta, your priority, you had a laser focus on one thing. What would it be? How would you accomplish it specifically?
If I had to pick one issue and only one issue, it's difficult to narrow down to one thing, but I have to go with our state's budget and funding, because if we can improve our budget, we can improve things like our healthcare system, our unemployment system, and better funding for our public schools. So I think if you look at the big picture, it has a trickle-down effect.
So you're talking about funding priorities then. We have a $90+ billion budget. Some argue about the allocation of that. And there are also going to be budget shortfalls that any of you are going to be dealing with. should you be elected, given COVID and the tax receipt issues falling off. So how in a world where tax receipts are going to be down, where we're going to have some tough decisions to make, do you protect your priorities specifically?
I think you just basically protect those priorities by holding steadfast to your core beliefs and putting pressure on the other legislators across the aisle, and making sure that they understand what is important in your district, and you maintain your stance on that to best represent the interests of your district when it comes to Tallahassee.
Mr. Thomas, priority.
My priority will be criminal justice. I hear everybody saying education. I believe that our educators are doing a very fine job, at least in this county, with the tools that they're given. So I will focus more on criminal justice and the clemency issues, piggybacking off of Amendment 4 a lot. A lot of individuals come to me and have said, hey, look, I've had a nonviolent offense or even a violent offense, and for 10 years or 20 years, they can't, vote. They can't get a decent job. They can't even feel, good enough about themselves because the government is holding them down by not allowing them to the chance to re-enter the workforce and those things. So I will work hard on those type of things. Criminal justice has been what I've worked in quite a bit, but I want to advance that conversation to allowing our returning citizens to re-enter the workforce without having to worry about that box that's on the front of where you have you been in trouble before, have you served time, and all those things that allow them to keep getting behind in the economic push that they would like to have. So I will be looking at criminal justice and clemency.
Three more themes we want to move through. One is a specific question about home rule that, again, in keeping with the spirit of this gathering, the chamber asks people in community to ask these questions. Want to talk about your feelings on home rule. We're also going to want to talk about issues about affordable housing, and that ties into the whole debate about equality, the debate that has really been invigorated in this country. And finally, a question about qualifications and some criticisms that each of you have had to face. Again, the incumbent, Al Jaquette, was invited to this forum. We do not know why he hasn't made it to the forum, whether it's a technical issue or otherwise. We're still trying to find that out, but for those of you who joined us, we thank you. The question from those that the chamber solicited information and input from: home rule. Florida's a home rule state, and yet each year the argument went, the state continues to erode a community's right to govern itself. As issues affecting local governance are presented for passage, how would you protect home rule, or will you? What is your position on home rule? Mr. Thomas, we begin with you. And by the way, in the spirit of this, if you need the 90 seconds, that's fine. But if you want to move it along, that's fine as well. You have up to 90 seconds, but go ahead, sir.
I appreciate it. Try to be as quick as possible. Having been on city council for 9 years, I understand how important home rule is. The issue with the government or the state, trying to infringe on that, the mandates that they normally come up with don't come with any funds. So the unfunded mandates continue to come, and it strangles the ability for projects to get done inside of your community. So I am a big proponent of home rule and making sure that cities and counties have the opportunity to do the things that they need to do within their community.
Ms. Asta?
I'm in favor of home rule. I am a strong believer that local government should have the ability to maintain and pass laws and regulations that directly affect the residents within each district. It affects their own community. So I think that they should be the ones who have the input of what rules and regulations are governing each community.
Ms. Mattson?
Yes, I support local power. Local knows best.
That was succinct. As we move along, Commissioner Hardy.
I support home rule generally. I do believe that folks who are elected locally should be able to make key decisions for their constituents and for their communities. But there are some exceptions to that. And this is a district where people have benefited from those exceptions. For example, there was an exchange that happened earlier this year with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, where Joe Biden was basically saying, you know what, school busing, state or federal government should be telling local school districts to desegregate their schools and to enact busing programs. He wanted the decisions to be made locally. Well, there's a reason why states and the federal government had to step in, because local governments weren't making the right decision with respect to integrating schools. And so that's an example of home rule being eroded. But of course, there was a statewide, and in that case, a national interest for the federal government or state government stepping in. And I think there's a similar interest when it comes to housing. Palm Beach County, South Florida generally is a growing place. If you look at our population growth and you look at the average household size, we should have added about 63,000 housing units over the last 10 years. We've only added about 43 additional housing units. Excuse me. We should have added about 63,000. We've only added about 43,000. And a lot of that has to do with local governments over-regulating the supply of housing, making it very difficult for people to build new housing. And I think that there is a role for the state legislature to play, given that affordable housing is a statewide concern, to encourage local governments to streamline the development approval process to make it easier to bring units online.
Commissioner, thank you. And Mr. Anderson.
I agree with home rule. Every district, every state is different. Every district, every county is different. So I agree with home rule. Yes.
Let's turn to the topic of coronavirus. Has been a topic that's consumed us. So too, another topic right now that all of us are talking about, and that is racial equality. Speak to that, and affordable housing is part of that discussion. So you can intertwine that into your comments. But how do we become a more equal society, one with more opportunity for constituents in your district, one that is more racially diverse, more racially sensitive, that allows economic opportunity to flow more broadly? How do we do that without dividing, as we are sometimes seeing, into camps and siloing ourselves by race and creed? All of us know how polarized we are. It's a big, big question, but given the events of the last few months, distill that into how that would reflect your priorities and what you would do as a state legislator as we continue to tackle this very, very important issue. Mr. Anderson.
Well, Michael, I believe that I'm older than all of the candidates on the panel. I was born and raised in a place called Kissimmee, Florida, and we were segregated. I was not allowed to drink out of the fountain that a white man drank out of. I was not allowed to look at a white woman when she walked down the street. So over the years, I've seen it change, and it has changed for the better. Is it better than it was in the 60s? Yes. Can we do better? Yes, we can. And the way we can do better is that we have to learn on either side of the fence, no matter what color we are, no matter what race, no matter what sex we are, we have to learn that we have to treat people like we treat ourselves. When we see people as others and they're not equal to us, then quite naturally, we're going to be prejudiced and have that type of attitude. And being a state legislator, seeing this happen throughout the years and seeing this country change from one state to another state, we have to be that person to be a role model in front of everyone else and to show them they don't use this word anymore, but to show them L-O-V-E, love, and show them what love is all about. I learned that instead of dividing people and getting angry at people, I've learned that you don't know what that person is going through that day. You don't know what they're experiencing, and you have to learn how. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but your time is concluded on that question. Again, you will have closing statements coming up relatively shortly. We thank all of you who are participating in our discussion. Commissioner Hardy, how would this very crucial and necessary and ongoing debate inform your legislative priorities? Obviously speak to your philosophical bent and thoughts, but also how it would directly inform your legislative priorities if you were to be elected.
Yeah. So there are lots of inequities, gaps, disparities along the basis of race that must be closed, and legislators have a public policy toolbox that they can use to close those disparities. And, you know, when it comes to education, for example, I do believe that we need a progressive funding model that sends more money to the schools that need it. When it comes to, for example, healthcare, something simple like expanding Medicaid, which if we had done it when it was originally available to us would have come at no cost originally. Today it would come at a cost of about $1.5 billion. I believe we can find those resources. But lack of access to healthcare is something that disproportionately impacts people of color, African American people, Latin American people, so on and so forth. So expanding Medicaid to the 900,000 people who would be eligible for it in its expanded state is something that we can use to address the inequities and the disparities in health, which are, by the way, showing up in COVID-19. In addition to that, let's talk about criminal justice. I think housing is important, but I've mentioned that previously. Let's talk about criminal justice. The war on drugs has disproportionately impacted African American people. Mandatory minimum sentencing has disproportionately affected African American people. And even when we go back and, for example, legalize medical cannabis, for example, the way that we've done it has had a disproportionate impact on African American people. We have a model here in Florida that says people who are engaged in cannabis commerce have to be vertically integrated, which means that you have access to capital, access to attorneys who can basically integrate you throughout this industry. There are lots of African American people who, for reasons that are longstanding, don't have access to that kind of capital. And now, even in legalization, they're disproportionately impacted. So we have to look at the disparities and target them with legislation.
Ms. Matston?
Thank you. I like a lot of the things that Mr. Anderson and Mr. Hardy said. As with Mr. Anderson, we 100% need to love and respect one another. And I love every person of every color and want to support every person in District 88. So what can we do for affordable housing? Number one, again, I want the Job Central as my office, want to support and encourage their ability to start a business, have resources, have the ability for them to learn new skills with technology. Also, we need to protect the Sadowski Fund. The Sadowski Trust Fund is supposed to be for affordable housing, so protect it. It should not be used for anything else but affordable housing. Also, we have amazing innovators. I was sitting down with a community organizer, and he was telling me all about container homes and all the fabulous new things that are coming about with affordable housing. So one, I want to assist those that would like to learn new skills, new craft, new trade, to equip and empower them with resources so that they can earn more. Palm Beach County is it is an expensive place to live because everybody wants to come here to live, to work, to play. So it needs to be a multifaceted solution. And also, as with Mr. Hardy, I'm for criminal justice reform. First of all, let's change the sentencing. There's people sitting in jail that should not be sitting in jail. And in fact, let's give them job training, skills training instead. Let's equip and empower them because I do want the best for every person in District 88, and I believe in every adult and child in my House district.
Thank you. Ms. Asta?
Yes, thank you. So there is a disparity. There is an imbalance in our community and throughout the state of Florida. And I think one of the ways that I would work to fix that is by having incentive programs for businesses that are owned by people of color or people of a minority group. They would get monetary incentive programs to support those small businesses. Besides businesses, we've got, like my colleagues here have said, our problems in the criminal justice system. Having been an attorney, interning at the state attorney's office and doing criminal defense, I've seen both sides of our criminal justice system throughout the state of Florida, and there is an imbalance, and we need to take a closer look at that. We need to look at the mandatory minimums and reevaluate these things, because unfortunately, there is a disproportionate number of people being charged with a crime and being placed in our jails and prisons.
Mr. Thomas?
The disparity, and I know we were talking, I think your question led to the race.
What would your legislative priorities be to address the inequality that has become such a central part of the national conversation in the last months since the killing of George Floyd? And how do we bring those concerns into practical legislative application? What specifically would be your priorities to bring to fruition so many of the concerns we're hearing? Whether it involves
the first thing that we need to do,
police departments, whether it involves economic opportunity, housing, what would your priorities be there? Your thoughts?
Right. Well, that's what I thought you were asking. The first thing we need to do is acknowledge that there is an issue, and I think that we're getting to that point. where we're acknowledging that there is an issue. The second thing that we need to do is, we all know that there's a disparity between Black and white, up and down, right? So it's not just in criminal justice where it does lie. It's also in the economic, part of this, the piece of this. You have to legislate your way through this. And take this district, for instance. It is the most gerrymandered district, so you can get an African American, on the seat. That's why it's gerrymandered the way it is. We need more individuals that look like me, a part of the legislature that can bring their thoughts to the table. My thought is, if you up the economic parity, if you allow us to make dollar for dollar like our white counterparts, if you allow us to have businesses like our white counterparts, if you stop the invisible redlining that still goes on today, or the predatory lending, or stop the ability for car manufacturers, or not manufacturers, car dealers to get these high interest rates and keep the Black community.
Your time is up. You'll have time in
Sure
closing
went pretty
comments.
fast, but okay.
I know that it does, sir, but we're relatively fast coming toward the end. You'll have 2-minute closings. Do you want to talk about, ultimately, people say, why are you qualified to be in the legislature? And some tough questions. Sun Sentinel posed them. Mr. Thomas, they said in a recent editorial, Mr. Thomas has his own credibility issues. He's not repaid a roughly $200,000 judgment from 2010 regarding a failed loan, they argued, for your charter bus company, and said, while a council member, you voted yourself a $12,000 raise for attending one additional minor meeting a month. How do you speak to that critique, to that criticism?
Well, I noticed that they had nothing positive to say about my body of work. Did I have a failed business? Yes, I did have a failed business. Did I dispose of that loan in the proper way that was handed to me through legislation? I did. I handled it the proper way. I understand how tough it is for small businesses.
That loan's completely paid off now, that $200,000 judgment?
It's been discharged.
Okay.
So my problem with this is, just like the Palm Beach Post, when one of my opponents decided they wanted to get into it, you all have picked up a story and do a story on them every day to try to continue the parity of it. I appreciate the ability for you to ask the tough questions. There's no problem. But what I would like to do is the same way when everybody else filed to run for office, give us the same ability that you're giving, that particular opponent. Nobody else got the press and the news the way that they did.
Who are you speaking about? Who are you speaking about?
You know who I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about Hardy. The Palm Beach Post announced him. Everything has been geared toward him, does not allow most of this. And I argued this about the Sun Sentinel. The Sun Sentinel didn't allow out into the debate, and some organizations don't even allow us to compete for it, right? So that's been my option. That's been my argument about it. Am I more qualified than Hardy? Of course I'm more qualified than Hardy. My problem is, if you never talk about the good stuff and only talk about the two bad things that had nothing to do with my work product, then that's all you're going to get.
I think this forum's been a chance for all of you to talk about the good stuff. I hope you all feel that way. Ms. Austin, the critique of you and Ms. Matston, Mr. Anderson, we'll go down the line, is a promising candidate but has no experience. And right now in this time and place, we need people who've had experience, and you just don't have it, Ms. Austin. That question could apply to a few others here too. So briefly answer that. People say, great, but just don't have the experience.
I see nothing wrong with that critique. I took promising to be a very good compliment there. And I don't have experience, but, well, let me correct that. I don't have experience in politics, but I am an experienced lawyer. I am a skilled negotiator. And I think that's what the state of Florida, that's what District 88 needs. The lack of experience as a political person just means that I'm not corrupt. No, I don't owe anything to anybody. I don't have anybody's hand in my pocket. I am running a very budgeted campaign and would greatly appreciate any campaign contributions, but I'm on a shoestring budget and trying to make everything work here. And because of that, because of that experience level, nobody owns me. And so I can do what I want for the people and their best interests.
Ms. Matson, same question really that I put to Ms. Dosta.
Well, in regards to the question, and I love your turnaround, Ms. Oster, that was very cool. I would say that I have been in politics from the time I could walk. My mother was bringing me to meetings and praying for this country from the time I was a toddler. I've been very involved supporting others. I believe in being a servant leader, so I've been behind the scenes supporting others before stepping up myself. I have served the community for years with child advocacy, anti-human trafficking. I also have a big issue, one of the big issues for me is missing children, and I support families that have had a child go missing. And so in my church, supporting the community in many different ways, just during this COVID, doing food distribution out in the community for those that are in most need of food. So I've been serving for years as a servant leader, and I want to continue to be a servant leader, and I want to do that by listening. And so I am 100% for building teams, getting the best of the best in every area, listening to them, and I want to work with the Chamber of Commerce. I want to work with business leaders to continue to support businesses, and I want to continue to listen. And only a fool would say they know everything. So I'm here to listen, and I'm here to work.
Okay, your time is wrapping. You will have 2-minute closes that are coming up very shortly. Commissioner Hardy, you heard the critique from Mr. Thomas. You can answer to that. The Sun Sentinel, by the way, said they didn't agree with you on the call to legalize recreational marijuana. You made some news last week when you talked about, I believe, renaming Dixie Highway. Talk about some of your motivations there, your motivation on that issue they disagreed with you on, but more broadly, your qualifications. And Mr. Thomas feels there's been an uneven playing field. So I know it's a lot to wrap up, but as we're beginning to come to a close, kind of your take on that. And I think the Dixie Highway issue, what does that accomplish? What is some of your other votes and positions, and why are you the person to go on behalf of your constituents?
Sure. The first thing that I'll say is I won't call anyone unqualified because they have debt. I'm someone who is a millennial who went to an expensive private college. I have $100,000 in student debt myself. I don't think that disqualifies me. In addition to that, I won't say that anyone who doesn't have government experience isn't qualified, because 3 years ago I walked into the clerk's office as a 26-year-old young man and filed my papers without having any local government experience, and I've been since elected and re-elected. What I will say is that you need someone who has curiosity, who has a passion for the issues, and who has the ability to put forward legislation that will make sense and that hopefully can pass both chambers, both of which are Republican controlled. And I believe that I have those policy chops, that intellectual curiosity, and the ability to get things done with folks on both sides of the aisle, particularly as regards affordable housing and streamlining some of the development approval processes for people building housing. On the Dixie Highway issue in particular, I think it would accomplish, quite frankly, a great deal. I'm an African-American man. I've lived in South Florida. I've always looked sideways, so to speak, at Dixie Highway. I always felt it was inappropriate, but I also felt disenfranchised, right? I felt that if I brought that issue up, no one would really care. No one would really understand. And I brought that up because it's one of those, quote unquote, minor indignities that African-American people have to experience and deal with for the entirety of their lives. That, and also the fact that they don't feel they have the ability to change it. And we're having a new conversation right now. And I felt it was an opportune and appropriate time to broach that topic in Lake Worth Beach.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes,
the issue about experience needs if I can hit the ground running.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Hardy. I don't have the political experience as far as others are concerned, but I do have the experience to be a legislator. I've been around helping people my whole life, and that's what it's all about, seeing the needs of the people. And when you see the needs of the people in the communities, here in District 88, I haven't seen those needs met. And so I feel that I'm the right candidate for the job. I've worked for the government, millions of dollars budget. I've owned my own business, $millions of budget. I've managed homes in Palm Beach, the town of Palm Beach, millions and millions of dollars. I've managed those. And so I can take these skills that I have of management leadership and being able to talk to people. I've been blessed with a gift, and that gift is to communicate. And I've been communicating with people over 40 years, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. I'm able to communicate. I'm able to talk. I'm able to listen. And I do agree with Mr. Thomas. The Sun Sentinel didn't even send me a questionnaire. I only saw questionnaires with other candidates. And so it is an uneven playing field. I ran for office before. It was an uneven playing field, and we managed to do a great deal. We managed to talk to a great amount of people.
Your time's up, but you'll have a close. In deference to the chamber and the wonderful job you all have acknowledged, I think it's their opportunity hoping to even the playing field. And I think forums like today do just that, to critique. I'm going to break format for a moment because we're coming to your closes right after this. But obviously, Mr. Jaquette, the incumbent, was invited. We don't know why he did not attend. The Sun Sentinel, in fairness, had said, talked about him being a no-show, said the Palm Beach Posted report, he'd basically gone missing, didn't respond to the state about election law violations, hadn't maintained a district office for 6 months, told a friend during the 2019 session, this according to the Sentinel, he'd lived for a time in his car. He was refused to answer questions about his whereabouts. So there was that critique that we put out there. He was invited, did accept to be here today. Very briefly, 20 seconds each, then we're going to go to your closes. Why are you better qualified than Mr. Jaquette to be in Tallahassee, Mr. Anderson? 20 seconds, no more.
I'm available.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hardy, Commissioner Hardy?
Yep. Well, you know, the first difference is that I show up to my job. I show up to work. You know, the second difference is that I'm a supporter of public schools. I'm a supporter of a woman's right to choose. And when I do show up on the floor of the House, I'll be voting in a way that is positive for the people in the district who I represent. There won't be any disconnect between the things I vote for and what's good for the people of District 88.
Ms. Mattson, briefly.
I will be here, available, and my office will be easy to see, easy to find. It will be Education Central, Job Central. I will be here to support you with resources, and I will be here for you to equip and empower you, because I believe that the best is yet to come for every person in District 8.
And we will come to closes in a moment, but to the specific question, Ms. Asta.
As everybody else said, I guess I'll get on the bandwagon. I'm available. So I'm also here for the people. But even a bigger component of that is that I am a skilled negotiator. I am going to be voting in line with our democratic principles. And I think that I would be representing our district a hell of a lot better than Mr. Jaquette.
Mr. Thomas. Unmute your mic, sir. Your mic.
Yes.
There you go, Mr. Thomas. There you go, sir. Very briefly
Okay.
on that, then you'll have the first closing statement.
Fine. I'm here. I've always been here. You can get in contact with me, but I'm fine with answering the tough questions. I do believe that the chamber did give Mr. Jaquette a fair chance, and they actually said if he pops up, they'll still let him in, which I think is fair to let all of the candidates in. But I'm here, and I'm running against Mr. Jaquette, or I'm running for the seat, because I think that he failed to show up and failed to represent us properly. And I will do just the opposite of what Mr. Jaquette.
We've tried to hew closely to time. We haven't done badly at all. And again, I know we hoped we've given you who've been watching and listening a flavor of the candidates. Now up to 2-minute closes, beginning with Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the chamber. I'd like to thank you as well, Mr. Williams, for moderating. This has been what I believe is a fair opportunity to get a snapshot of the candidates here. I do believe that all of the candidates that are here have the drive and the passion to do it, but experience does matter. It's not the only thing, but it does matter. I'm here. I've chose to live here. I live in this district. I want to serve this district. I have been serving this district, whether I was in office or on the police department or just a regular citizen. I do have legislative experience. I understand what it takes to get things done. The same thing that Commissioner Hardy is trying to get done in Lake Worth with the renaming of Dixie, we did that in Riviera Beach. You know, those things, the House bills that came down in terms of large family child centers, we did that. I led the charge for that, creating more jobs inside of the city where I was serving. I have the experience and I do know how to get along with the other side of the aisle. My issue that remains in this district is it's so gerrymandered that it creates controversy, and all we do is fight, for months and years afterwards because individuals don't want to run in the district where they qualify for. And who I'm talking to specifically is Mr. Hardy. He does not live in the district. He should operate and run in a district where he probably could win, but he thinks that this is an easier district, and it upsets me that people will allow somebody to disrespect where we live. If you want to serve us, live where we live, where you want to represent at. My problem is if that continues to happen, we will always get nothing. We'll always continue to be the laughing stock and the only gerrymandered district that doesn't mean anything. I'm upset because it means something to me, and I feel that you're disrespecting my district by not living here and wanting to represent it. Represent 87 where you live. Lastly, I am who you know. My phone number hasn't changed for 23 years. I'm here. Whatever the ups and downs have been, I've always been here to face what.
Mr. Thomas, your time is finished. I'll go slightly out of order because of your very sharp critique. Everybody will get up to 2 minutes, but Mr. Hardy, your 2 minutes, and you can respond to the critique, the very forceful one you just heard from Mr. Thomas as part of that if you so choose. 2 minutes for you, and all candidates will have up to 2 minutes. But first, you, Commissioner Hardy.
Former Councilman Thomas is a veteran of politics, and he knows that it's not an easy thing to run against an incumbent, and it's a much more difficult thing to run against an incumbent with access to Tallahassee money. I chose to do that before the meltdown that we have seen of Representative Jaquette over the last 6 months. I got into this race when it was difficult, but I got into this race because people in the district asked me to get into this race. These include elected officials who know us both, who have chosen to endorse me over former Councilman Thomas, whether that be the 3 members of the Riviera Beach City Council that have endorsed me, Ms. Kashamba Miller-Anderson, Ms. Julia Botel, Ms. Shirley Lanier, or whether that be the entire West Palm Beach City Commission, which has endorsed me, as well as former Commissioner Richard Riles, right? And so this isn't me jumping into this race because I felt it was easy. I jumped into this race because I knew it was hard, but I also knew that it was the right thing to do. And really, that's why I'm in this race. I felt that we haven't gotten good representation from Representative Jaquette. As it's been stated, he doesn't show up. And when he does show up, he votes against our interests, whether that be, again, a woman's right to choose, public education, healthcare and access to Medicaid. Those are things that he has all voted against. And those are things that you will not find me voting against in Tallahassee. And, as far as folks in the district, look, I serve on the Lake Worth Beach City Commission. This district runs through the city of Lake Worth Beach. I work in this district, for the West Palm Beach Housing Authority. But before that, when I was in the classroom, I worked at Roosevelt Middle School, which is in the district. I'm very familiar with it. And, I have lots of skills that I bring to the table that I think people would need. And, I won't throw darts at anyone here. This is about trying to present a clear vision of a better Florida. And I think that that's what my campaign has been about with regards to public education. I have very detailed plans on my website, healthcare, affordable housing, criminal justice reform. I put together a very clear vision. And so I would urge you to go to omarihardy.com, omarihardy.com.
Sir, we're going to have to wrap you,
take
sir.
a look at the issues. Thank you.
Ms. Asta, up to 2 minutes.
Yes. First of all, I just want to say thank you again for having me. And the reason why I got involved in this race is because as a Lebanese woman, I have also experienced discrimination. I've always wanted to get involved in politics, but with the recent events with Black Lives Matter being remotely confined basically due to COVID, and my research of our incumbent and his lack of activity, his failure to the people, those 3 things was what got me involved in this current race. And I believe that the people in our district, they need a skilled negotiator. They need a lawyer to interpret, decipher, and help write laws that are in their best interest. I'm a lawyer. Who else knows the laws better than me? Who else knows how to better decipher those laws and write those laws but me? And so for those reasons, I think I would best represent the people in our district. And another thing that I think is really important is I have thus far timely and accurately done all of my financial reporting. Unlike some of my opponents here, there have been a number of other candidates that have failed to do their financial reporting. They've got audit letters, they've got fines. They're just like Al. I'm different. And so I think that I am the best one for this position.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Mattson. Your final comments.
Danielle Matson for Florida House, District 88. First of all, I just want to thank you so much to the Central Palm Beach County Chamber of Commerce for having me, the board of directors, the management team, and I will get to the point. Mr. Williams, it's been an honor to be with you, and to the other distinguished candidates that are here, it's an honor to be here with you as well. For the reason that I believe you should support me, I have the experience. I have a counseling degree. I'm trained in conflict resolution and communication, and I want to listen to you. As the Republican candidate, I am better positioned to bring home the dollars to projects in District 88 that need funding, and I want to do that, and I promise to do everything in my power to bring the dollars home to my district. I'm 100% for education, and if I'm elected, I will make my office education central and job central. The resources will be there. I've been a Republican Executive Committee member for a long time. I've served the community for a long time, and I would like to serve you. And again, also, I want to speak to all the businesses and business leaders. I support you, I will listen to you, and I'm for business and for small business. And so I am at your service. Thank you so much. Danielle Matson, Florida House, District 88.
And Mr. Anderson, your closing comments, sir. Come off mute if you could, please. You're on mute, sir.
How's
Mr.
that?
Anderson? There you go, sir.
How's
Yes, sir.
that? Okay,
Yes, sir.
yes. I just want to thank the chamber for allowing me to participate. I registered at the last moment because I didn't know. But then I want to thank you, Michael, for your questions. I always enjoy hearing your voice. Listen, I think I'm the best candidate for this office simply because of my experience in the business world. I've always been a success. I love to fight. I don't always win, but I will always fight for what's right for the people, and especially for this district. This district needs a leader, one who's going to stand up, who's going to stand tall, who's not tied to any political pack. We don't have any money from political PACs, and we will not receive money. I talked to someone yesterday. We just want to accept money from political PACs. I'm accepting money from people who I need to represent. Now, I try to stay true to every question that you ask and not go off talking about education and talking about other things to use my time. Sure, I'm for education. I think everybody should be educated, and especially in this day and age. I will fight for the educators. I will fight to make sure that the teachers are children, to make sure that they are protected. I'll fight for racial and economic justice, health care for all. I just lost my grandson because of a poor health system. I'm still suffering mentally because of a poor health system. I'll fight to improve voter access. I'll fight for violence against women. I'll fight for gun violence in our streets. No one talked about all of the drive-by shootings that's in our neighborhoods on a constant basis. I will fight for that. I'm with people all the time
Mr.
fighting
Anderson,
for those. Yeah.
Please wrap, sir.
Yes, sir. And so I'm the man who will fight for you. I see the needs of the community. I will fight for the needs of the community. I will not fight for political parties, but I will fight for the community. Thank you
very much. I know that all of the candidates join me in applauding all of you who have participated in this forum and part of the democratic process that's so vital, and even in our new Zoom world, finding new ways. So to Ms. Mattson, Ms. Asta, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Anderson, Commissioner Hardy, thank you so much. I'm going to memorialize, it's my first ever Zoom debate interview, so it's been an interesting day. I think I'll memorialize it here with a shot of all of you all as my own makeshift studio. We thank all of you, and I'll turn it back over to Mary Lou Bedford. And again, to all of the candidates, I sincerely thank you so very much for taking time to be with us. Mary Lou and Al, take it away.
Thank you so much, Michael. We really appreciate all the candidates for House District 88 being here today, and for our wonderful moderator, Michael Williams, WPTV Channel 5, for a very informative forum. We want to thank you on behalf of the Central Palm Beach County Chamber Board of Directors, our Economic Development and Government Affairs Committee, and of course our staff who worked tirelessly to put this together. And I want to just say to all those who are attending, our audience, if you have questions, you can see on the screen here, you can email us at info@cppchamber.com or go to our website. We have all the candidates' information located on our website that is available if you have questions. We do have 2 more candidate forums this week. We have our Senate race coming up on Wednesday, the 29th, also at 11:30, continuing our virtual luncheon series. And then finally, we're wrapping up with our Port of Palm Beach race with Sharon Merchant will be our moderator for the Port of Palm Beach, and Dr. Robert Watson will be our moderator for the Senate. So once again, thank you, each and every one of you. Again, Michael Williams, thank you for your time. I know how busy
Thank you.
are. We're so happy we could be your first Zoom forum.
Thank you all for bearing with me.
In your minds, and thank you each of the candidates for being here today. We really appreciate it, and we wish you all a very good week. And stay positive, everyone. We're here for you if anyone needs us. So, again, thank you so much. And on behalf of everyone, have a great day.
You all as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very, very much. Have a good day. Be safe. Be well.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. See everybody later. All the
Bye,
candidates.
everyone.
See you next time. All right.